Call to order the meeting of Mayor and Council. Thank you all for being here. If you'll rise. Bow your heads, please. Almighty God, we just give you great thanks and praise for this wonderful town that we live in and get the opportunity to serve. I pray your blessing on all those that are here, all those that are watching, and all that someday will call Seaford home. We pray your guidance and direction on this meeting tonight, that we would honor you with all that we say and do. We ask this in Jesus' name, and everyone says, Amen. Please remain standing for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Okay, do we have any changes to tonight's agenda?
No, sir, only the deletion of 2 of the visitors that we were planned to have.
Okay. All right, you all received the minutes from our last meeting on August 11th. If there are no questions or comments, I'll accept the motion to receive the minutes.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
So Councilman Holland made a motion. Do we have a second?
Councilman McCoy, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. All right. So we're skipping number 1.
Yes, sir.
Number 2.
Number 2, Michaelina is here.
All right.
So, Michaelina, would you mind coming up with Katie?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I would like to introduce our new full-time employee, Michaelina Rumley. She has actually worked for the city for us for a little over a year now. But she now is working full-time instead of part-time for us. We are very thankful to have her. She has a lot of spunk and really knows her way around a mower. Teaches the guys how to be courteous to others. So we are very, very thankful to have her with us tonight. I don't think we're gonna, are we gonna
We can
shake
do the
hands?
elbow bump.
Elbow bump?
We got to have you walk the line, Michaelina. So.
Welcome. Welcome aboard. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome aboard. We appreciate you. Okay, do we have any correspondence?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, then we will go on to new business number 1, which is the report from the Annexation Committee.
Okay, just a little bit of background. In your packages, you have the fully executed annexation report. On June 14th, the mayor did appoint a committee, and it was made up of 3 members. It was chaired by Councilman Henderson. It was also attended by Councilman McCoy and Councilman Holland. And the idea or the mission of that committee was to look at the annexation of property on Sussex Highway. You'll see there in the presentation, we did receive the formal request for annexation on June 15th. And this is the property. It's known as the Sunrise Motel. It's owned by Saipan Shah. The address is 22512 Sussex Highway. The tax map and parcel number is 331-3-180.00. So there's the city zoning map. It's shown there, the subject parcel. It is currently unannexed, but it is eligible for annexation because it's contiguous to existing city limits. And the current zoning across the street there is C2, Highway Commercial. And you'll see on the next slide in our comprehensive plan, land use plan, that ellipse there that's a dotted line along Sussex Highway, that is slated to be commercial in the comprehensive plan. So this annexation in commercial terms, C2, would be in conformance with the comprehensive plan. So on August 12th, the Annexation Committee did meet, and it was a public meeting that was live streamed, and they did go through this information. They talked about the reasons for annexation, which is on the petition for annexation. They want to obtain city utilities. As council is well aware, water is going up Route 13, Sussex Highway. Sewer is planned. Hopefully, if we can get a funding plan together, it'll be constructed next year. There are no streets and roadways there. That road, Sussex Highway, is a state-maintained road. Also, we do not have stormwater drainage in the area. That's a state-maintained system. As stated earlier, they are requesting zoning that is conformance with our growth plan, our zoning map, C2 highway commercial. We do not have electric directly in front of the property, but it is near the property. We serve the Lowe's parcel currently, so that's, we are planning sewer to be extended in the area on the other side of Route 13 as well as to the south from the Lowe's complex up to the new Lakeshore Motors car dealership. Water has been installed on the other side of Sussex Highway. If the annexation were successful, any kind of easements the property owner would need to provide. The property owner is aware and has been informed that property tax, should he be annexed, would be required and would need to be paid. Just a side note, the city did adopt a lodging tax recently, so that would be applicable to this as it is a motel. We talked about the comprehensive plan. It is in conformance with our comprehensive plan. The committee did review the advantages of annexing this property to the city. You can read them in your package there. Obviously, it's an increase in tax base. We can provide utility services. There are several there. They also discussed at length the disadvantages to the city. Continued growth would expand our services, require more people. They went through the advantages to the area proposed for annexation as well as the disadvantages to the area proposed for annexation. And after our meeting, as a result of our meeting, the committee members did unanimously agree to proceed with the annexation for the property, and it recommended C2 highway commercial zoning. They did, and as required by our charter, there will be a public hearing to fully explain the areas being proposed for annexation into Seaford. So that'll come to a future meeting, and we will have a public hearing allowing public to comment, and we'll move forward. There is a disclaimer there in the annexation report, subject for council's approval. It's only on the annexation of lands. It has nothing to do with any kind of project that might occur there or anything like that. It's just, should the city decide to annex land and expand the boundaries, is it appropriate? It is fully executed as stated by the chairman, Councilman Henderson, Councilman Holland, and Councilman McCoy. And I defer to the chairman. I went through that kind of quick, but were there any items, Councilman, that I missed that you might want to highlight?
Just a personal observation that over the last several months, this is a new owner who desires to reinvest in the property and already has invested tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of improvements to the property. So I think it was our collective, the other members are here, but I think we could all agree that this would be a net plus for the city because of its improvements and his desire to further develop the property. So that was one of the big pluses to having them to a favorable disposition for annexation.
Okay. Councilman Santos, Councilman King, do you have questions about the committee report?
I have one.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Councilman King, my question is in regards to electric. What kind of costs would the city incur to expand electric to that location? I know we're running it up to Lakeside, the automobile dealership out on the highway. I know we already have that in the works. So what type of cost would be involved in extending it to this property?
All right, so let me clarify a couple things. One, we don't have a plan yet to extend electric to Lakeshore Motors. Our planning and our partnership with the developer is solely related to water and sewer extensions up Sussex Highway. Obviously, our mission is to expand our electric business, and upon annexation of this property and even Lakeshore Motors, we have the authority through our agreement with DP&L and DEC that we can extend our utility territory. So as council has done in the past, what we do at that time upon annexation, we notify the sister utility, and staff always asks for a buyout clause. So we say, okay, this property, can you give us, based on our agreement, what the buyout number is? We've done several in the last year or so. They range in price based on, the use, so on and so forth. So we would request that, and then at that time, we bring it to council, and council can decide, do they want to buy the service out? That's one cost. I can't tell you that right now because we don't have any authority to even ask that question yet. The second cost would be, and the Director of Electric and I have met out there as the Director of Public Works and the Economic Development Director as well. The plan is to run a parallel pole line up Sussex Highway, overhead distribution, but that would be an overbuild of an existing DP&L line, and that tends to be expensive because that's work our crews cannot do, and we have to pay DP&L to do that. But we have done that. We've done it all the way up the other side of Sussex Highway. I cannot give you that price at this time, Councilman. We would have to bring that price back to you, but that would be part of the decision that the council would have to make. Do they want to extend and serve the proposed construction, buy out the existing service, propose anything that, or serve anything that redevelops or any proposed development? But that will show itself to you within the next few months, maybe first quarter of next year at the latest, depending upon how things go.
All right, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yep,
Okay.
Do you remember a ballpark price, what we paid for the old Dillard's property when we bought that out? That seems to me to be the last one.
I don't remember the old Dillard's. The one I remember is the old Mike Hall gym behind it.
Right, okay.
And I recall, the Director of Economic Development is going to help me, but I recall it being about $7,000.
Yeah, so it's not,
Now, one of the things I'll point out about that building had not been occupied for a period of time, so they look back a period of time based on their consumption, and it's a calculation they do. So this is a going concern. It's probably going to be more than that.
Right.
But to wag a number for you, I apologize,
right,
I can't.
that's been a long time. Okay, I just wanted to give a ballpark. Councilman Santos, do you have any questions and references? Okay. If there are no other questions, then I'll accept the motion in reference to the Annexation Committee report.
Councilman Orlando Holland, I make the motion. Motion to accept Annexation Committee report for property owned by Mr. Sapan Shah, Sussex County Tax Max Parcel 331-3.00-180.00 and address 22512 Sussex Highway, known as the Sunrise Motel, as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Councilman King, I'll second that.
I appreciate that. Councilman King. Tracy, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Santos.
Aye.
Councilman Henderson.
Aye.
Councilman Holland.
Aye.
Councilman McCoy.
Aye.
Councilman King.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, we have the proposed tax abatement on the residents at River Place Apartments for their building number 3.
Okay, so thank you, Mayor. In your package, you have an email from Faith Diamond, who is one of the principals with Residents at River Place LLC. And you'll see there in the email that they've been very successful in their first 2 buildings along the riverfront. They are fully leased up. That's I guess the very good news. And they are moving forward into building 3. And that's building 3 and 4 are the buildings that will go up South North Street towards Middleford Road. They'll be very similar in the design, the height, and the units. Each building will be 36 units. But what they are asking is they are asking for the same consideration for a real estate tax abatement that the city gave them for buildings 1 and 2. So in your package as well are 2 letters, and because just to walk council back through it, the first letter that was written by the former city manager on September 16th, 2016, was the initial time we stepped into the tax abatement. And I'll just kind of hit the highlights. The abatement, at that time, council approved it to begin on July 1 of 2017. And the property owner will continue to pay the assessed taxes for the parcel. They are subject to change should assessment reoccur, which it did occur. But they don't pay taxes on the improvements, so they continued to pay the city what they had paid prior, and they were allowed to build the improvement without taxation for the first 5 years. So it was a full abatement, year 1 through 5, and then council determined that year 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, that assessment would increase 20% a year on the improvement value. So that was given at that time, and that clock started to run. That's being done. They are taking advantage of that. They came back to us March of 2019, and that's when they built building number 2, and they asked for similar consideration. We did exactly the same thing. That letter is laid out there. Council did approve it. The only caveat I'll give you is council said that abatement would begin on the exact same day. So there had been some time that lapsed there, but that start date stayed the same. So both those tax abatements are running on a parallel track. They would like the same abatement, and they would like the same terms. So when we talked about it with staff, these tax abatements are a little bit hard to track for our tax folks, our accounting folks. So we do like the idea of having it coincide with a budget year. So July 1 is a recommendation we'd like to make. We can do it anyway. It's not an issue, but it's nice when they run on a parallel track. We can track it in the budget, how much it is, and each year we can tick it down so we make sure we charge them correctly. The city's treated fairly, as well as the property owner, developer. So should council want to consider this, they're requesting the exact same terms with a start date we could just suggest of July 1, 2021.
Okay, are there any questions in regards to the tax abatement request from residents? Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dan Henderson. Charles, can you expand on that? If they were to get a tax abatement to start on July 1st, 2021, even though they haven't broken ground, the clock starts ticking?
Well, that's a stipulation. If we give them the date, the clock would start ticking. I can talk to you about his current construction schedule. They have submitted drawings for building number 3. It's currently in the process of review with the Fire Marshal Conservation District. Director of Public Works got their, I'll call it schematic sewer redesign plans. So, and I know you're very familiar with this, but the interceptor sewer runs diagonally across the property and has to be relocated. So that's a kind of a wrinkle in this project. But he submitted all the plans to everyone with an anticipated start date of the new building in October is what he would like to do. So assuming they start in October, typically these buildings have taken them 8 to 10 months to build. One of them took almost a year. So we just use that date. Certainly if there's a better date out there, if you prefer to use a certificate of occupancy, we can certainly do that. But he plans on starting sooner rather than later.
Right.
No, I just wanted it clarified that even though the project wasn't done, it was go time on
Start the clock.
July 1.
Yeah, I mean, that's a suggestion, and it does start the clock ticking. That's a good point.
Okay.
Yep, that would do that.
The other follow-up to that would be, just refresh my memory, is building 3 72 units, all of them, or there's not a building 4?
Well, you recall correctly. Initially, the submittal was one long building along South North Street with 72 units. And it was kind of, for lack of a better term, the front of it was subgrade up on Middle Ford Road. You recall that correctly. Due to financing issues and absorption in the market, they did make a change in the last year or so to where they're doing replica buildings. They broke that building into 2, building 3 and building 4.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So this is just for building 3 and not the balance of the 72?
Correct.
The ask currently is building number 3. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So it's just for 36 units, because my previous conception of building 3 was for all 72 units.
Right.
You recall correctly.
And if they're going to start building in October and trying to finish 72 units,
Right.
That's, the time frame didn't mesh with me.
Right.
Does
So
that
thank you
provide a
very-
little clarity?
Thank you very much.
Any other questions, Councilman King?
Yep. Charles, Can you give us a guesstimation of the savings for this investor if we approve this? When you
I
look over
can.
10 years?
Yeah, I can. The Director of Finance actually ran it. She is not here with us right now. She'll be here later. I recall that she told us at staff meeting, each one of these over the 10-year run is $248,000. That just gives you a number. And again, you know, these buildings, the Director of Economic Development can help me, but these buildings are about how much each to construct?
Was the whole project 1 and 2 was all in $11 million.
Yeah, so 2 buildings is $11 million, so it's a huge investment they're making. I mean, they're beautiful buildings, but to answer your question directly, as far as what the city's contributing, think about $250,000 or so.
Okay, any other questions from council? If not, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve a tax abatement for the residents at River Place LLC, apartment building number 3, as previously approved for buildings number 1 and number 2 for a period of 10 years with the following stipulations. Abatement will begin July 1, 2021. The property owner will continue to pay the assessed land taxes for parcel 431-5.00-318, 322, and a part of 332.01, which are subject to change should reassessment occur. 10-year abatement shall follow the following schedule. Years 1 through 5, full tax abatement on the improvements portion of the property tax assessment. Years 6 through 10, increasing incremental rates at 20% annually, i.e., year 6, 20% payment of annual assessed improvement property tax value. Year 7, 40% payment of annual assessed improvement property tax value. Year 8, 60% payment of annual assessed improvement property tax value. Year 9, 80% payment of annual assessed improvement property tax value. Year 10, 100% payment of annual assessed improvement property tax value. Abatement resides with the current property owner only and is non-transferable as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Councilman Holland, I second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Tracy, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Santos,
Aye.
Councilman Henderson,
Aye.
Councilman Holland,
Aye.
Councilman McCoy,
Aye.
Councilman King.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous, good. Thank you. We'll communicate that back to those folks. They'll be happy with that. All right, next we have the bids for the street paving. Is Mr. Mears coming down? Of course.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Good evening. Yeah, this is just our annual street paving bid. We received 7 bids, which is a good turnout. And the lowest bidder, ECM Corporation, who we've never worked with before, but they're from actually over near Washington, D.C., but they do work over here. They've done a lot of work for Delmar, town of Delmar. So they met all the requirements of the bid. So my recommendation is to go with them.
Okay, are there any questions in regards to the street paving bid for 2020? Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dan Henderson here. Can you give the council and the public an idea of which areas on Arch Street, Market Street, and King Street that would be paved?
Sure. So Market Street, because we have to mill them down full depth and put them back, it's a lot more expensive. So Market Street, I'm going to break down from High Street to Poplar. So the first 2 blocks heading north. Then we're going to do King Street over to Arch Street, and then basically Arch Street back to High Street. So it's kind of like a little
Like a
H
J,
shape.
or-
Yeah.
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 Thank you. Any other questions in regards to the paving bid? If
I
not,
would like to point out, just so we know,
Please.
because I like to point this out every year, but we have about, of that $118,000 for paving streets, we got about $60,000 or so, well, that's Well, $50,000 for handicap ramps, just so
Okay.
we know. It eats up a lot of money, but we have that requirement now to use that money. We have to put them in
So out of the 118, 50,000 is going towards handicap
handicap
ramps.
ramps. So it reduces the amount of streets you
Sure.
can actually pave every year. So.
No, I appreciate you clarifying that. Yes, Councilman Henderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's Dan Henderson again. Now, early in my service here at the city, they made revisions to that, like successively, and then has it steadied off? Have there been any recent revisions that have caused the ramps to get more expensive?
No, other than just the cost of materials and things. You know, we used to put them in for about 3,000 each. Now they were 4,000 each this year.
Thank you.
Councilman Santos, did you have a question?
Yeah, Councilman Santos here. I didn't quite catch where in Arch Street?
Our street is from High Street to King Street.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. If not, I'll accept a motion.
All right, Mr. Mayor, Councilman King, I'll make the motion to award the street paving 2020 bid to the low bidder ECM Corporation in the amount of $118,726.50 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Councilman McCoy, I'll second.
Okay, thank you very much. Tracy, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Santos.
Aye.
Councilman Henderson.
Aye.
Councilman Holland.
Aye.
Councilman McCoy.
Aye.
Councilman King.
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thanks, Burley. Appreciate your work on that. All right, next we have my appointments for the Parks and Rec Committee. If there's no questions to the names on that committee or any challenges to those folks that are being listed, I'll accept the motion.
Councilman Holland. Mr. Mayor, I make the motion to approve the appointment of the Parks and Recreation Committee as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Councilman McCoy, I'll second.
Okay, thank you very much, Tracy. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Santos.
Aye.
Councilman Henderson.
Aye.
Councilman Holland.
Aye.
Councilman McCoy.
Aye.
Councilman King.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. And then another appointment to the Antique Fire Restoration Committee, Mr. Boyd Taylor. I'd like to appoint him. If there are no questions or comments, I'll accept a motion.
I have one
Yes,
brief
sir.
comment. Does Mr. Taylor's appointment replace someone, or is this an additional member?
He asked to serve, correct?
He was previously on there, but he didn't respond prior to the annual appointments.
Okay.
So it's
Thank
just
you.
being reappointed. Thank you. Thanks, Tracy. Any other questions? If not, I'll accept a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the appointment of Boyd Taylor to the Antique Fire Truck Restoration Committee as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Councilman Holland. Mr. Mayor, I second that motion.
Okay, thank you very much, Tracy. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Santos.
Aye.
Councilman Henderson.
Aye.
Councilman Holland.
Aye.
Councilman McCoy.
Aye.
Councilman King.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, under old business, we have the information regarding the voter registration. Tracy's going to bring back some additional information.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I'm here tonight to provide some further information regarding the voter registration since our last council meeting. As I was requested, I reached out to the city of Rehoboth Beach regarding their significant voter turnout of their recent election. According to their city clerk, the voter turnout this year was driven by the candidates because there was some contentious issues that they were dealing with at the time. And she also pointed out that they had many voters that filed by absentee instead of having to show up in person due to the pandemic. But she did add that they also did have a good showing of in-person voting. Just as a side note, the city of Rehoboth Beach does allow non-resident property owners, and they do maintain their own book of registered voters. I did do a little bit further. I reached out to some other municipalities that were kind of similar to us, even though they're in different counties in the state. One that I reached out was to the town of Middletown, just to kind of see the feel of other towns that may be in different counties. So they do maintain their own records regarding voter registration. A few years ago, they did look into getting set up into the state system, and they actually did it this previous year too.
But they did not do it because they didn't really have enough time. And plus, at that point in time, the state was getting new machines, so they were they already felt there was enough change, so they didn't want to add more change to the mix. They also shared with me that, as everyone I think is aware, the state system, the way that they pull the database, the information to us is set up by zip code. So they had a concern of how much time that would take of their staff, because they gave me an example that Middletown's zip code comprises of approximately 100,000 people. So getting the system to pare down to what their residents consist of, which includes about 22,000, that would involve a lot of staff time. So they had a concern there of how they would be able to do that and get it all turned around in time. I also reached out to the town of Smyrna, who a few years ago also switched over to the state's database. The staff member I talked to couldn't get any insight to me of how it worked, like the transition worked from their system to the staff system, because she wasn't employed there at the time. But they do use the state's database, and they have made out well with it, she said. But just as a side note, they do not allow non-resident property owners to vote in their municipal elections, only residents living in the town. I reached out to the city of Milford as well. They are very similar to how we do ours. They maintain their own records, they allow non-resident property owners to vote, and they have also recently had some discussions about transitioning over to the state's database, but they have not made a decision as of now. But they are similar to us, where they extend office hours to do voter registrations and all of that. So I also reached out to the town of Georgetown because, as I discussed at the last meeting, they were getting ready to have their election. So they had their election a couple weeks ago. This was the first election that they had in many years, and this was their first election they had using the state's database. So I just reached out to them to see how it went and what their experience was. They did have a few incidents when people were located on the out-of-town list rather than the in-town list, and that could have been from where the coding wasn't done correctly, things like that. And they also had a few incidences where people were not on either list, in-town or out-of-town. So that could have meant they didn't have their address updated on their driver's license, they weren't registered with the state to vote. It could mean a couple different things. And just as I did ask them, they had 395 voters that voted in their election this year. So I did also want to share that I do have a relationship with many clerks throughout the state, and we always share ideas with each other and just think, have discussions about suggestions and ideas of what we can bring back to our towns. I had a conversation with a recent clerk, and she was telling me that she was looking into a fillable form, an online fillable form, to allow voters or potential voters to go online, fill this form out, and once they submitted it, it would come directly into their office. So here, and I actually printed some out because it's kind of hard to see. So here are some suggestions. So she's working with a vendor now, and here's some of the samples that the vendor sent to her. So I did have a little bit of a discussion with Charles about it. So this first one's the one I'm passing around. It's very detailed. Obviously, we would put in there what we wanted in there specific to our election. But I did think that this was potentially a good thing, that if we maintain having our records, that this would be something that we could put on our website, and we could point people there to say, hey, you can go online, similar to what the state does, and register online to vote for our elections. I do have a demonstration set up on September the 3rd at 11:30, just to go through the vendor with this, just to see. He's supposed to show how it would look when it came back to us and just give us some price ranges. He wasn't able to give us any price ranges. But I did just want to share that just to let you know that we are looking into options and ways that we can help, if we maintain our own records, of how can we make it user-friendly and available to our residents. And even those that don't live here, that may live outside the state.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Tracy? Tracy, first, thank you for doing all this work and research and all that. I appreciate it. Councilman Henderson?
You ready to go? Okay. Dan Henderson here. Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate you following up. And this is kind of an IT question, but would an online registration application come with an IP address to identify where it came from?
Depending on the system, I mean, yes, potentially.
To make sure it didn't come from Russia or
We'd have to.
somewhere where it shouldn't be?
The vendor.
Yeah.
To find out what information, I mean, certainly we could probably delve into that, but,
Yep.
not knowing what the vendor system looks like, I can't 100%
Russia's kind of, I'm being facetious, but maybe Bridgeville or Blaze, just to make sure that it came from Seaford.
There's usually a CAPTCHA that's put on fillable forms, because there's a lot of times the
Right, bots.
robotic fillable things.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And we would still have to verify when we get those in our office that they were eligible, and, we would still, just because you register online, we would still need to say, compare all the information and the data
Right.
given, and then if they weren't eligible to vote, we would notify them, and their reason why they weren't
Yeah.
added.
For instance, someone who checked the box, I do not have a Delaware driver's license, non-operator ID or social security number. I mean, would you further vet that potential voter? What would happen then?
Well, we would set this up, this is just an example, so we may or may not have that specific question on ours. We would put something on there, for instance, like, if you don't own property in the city, what's the address that makes you eligible to vote? Things like that. So as far as if they don't have a driver's license or a social security number or anything like that, they could provide a utility bill, a property tax bill,
Right, okay.
mail or something like that. So we would make it specific to us. So we typically don't ask for like social security numbers, driver's license. We do allow driver's license as a way to get registered to prove that you are eligible, but that wouldn't disqualify them for not being able to vote if they didn't have a driver's license.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yep.
Councilman King?
Yep, Councilman King. First of all, thank you, Tracy. That was
Oh, did you
all the
not?
hard work that you put into it. My question is around the day and time. Was there any conversations with other cities around election? I mean, I think we do a real good job with voter registration, but it seems like when you look at the voter registration versus the actual turnout, there's still a huge gap. So did you have any discussions or conversations around with the other cities on, if that day and time is working for them? Is there anything we can do differently for potential voters so they will come out and vote?
Well, most of my discussions with multiple municipalities up and down the state is voter turnout is very slim. And Charles actually, and I did some math today, we did population versus numbers of people that voted for, I think it was Milford, us, and Smyrna.
Middletown? Yeah.
Maybe all four.
Yeah.
But we actually had the highest percentage out of all of them. I think that, a lot of it depends on, for instance, Rehoboth Beach, they could have this year had an outstanding turnout, next year it could be nothing, but they had some issues going on that drove those voters in. Another thing I think that drives the voters in is the candidates. Typically for us, when we have the mayor seat up and 2 council people, that brings the most people out. When we only have 1 council seat up that year, we get maybe 200-300 people. As far as the day that most other municipalities have their elections, for instance, Milford, they do theirs on a Saturday, I do know. I'm not sure when Middletown or Smyrna does theirs. Georgetown did theirs on a Saturday. So I know Newark does theirs on a Tuesday. I think just different. The only thing about during the week is it's not an issue, but you kind of have to think of those working people. So it's kind of like 8 to 8 or 7 to 8. It's a longer day for our poll workers that basically volunteer their time.
So is there any thought around actually having that conversation with registered voters to ask them if there's anything we can do to make things easier for to grow that number?
I mean, I think that we could, reach out to, but I mean, if you were to post a survey or something, like online, you would have to, how can you gauge you're only getting registered city residents to respond? That could be a hard thing to filter out because you could get someone out in Concord or Middleford respond that not only are they not a registered voter, they're not even an eligible voter. So, I mean, we could always, I guess, ask our election board, but I don't know how else we can engage specifically those 1,300 people that are registered without, I mean, taking the time to mail each individually a letter.
Yeah, well, not even the 1,300 that are registered, but potentially the 5,000 or 6,000 that have the ability to vote, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, just to add, and I'm pretty positive Councilman Henderson was part of the discussions at the time, but we actually did change our hours of voting within the last, help me out, Councilman Henderson, 5 years?
6 years, yeah.
4 years.
4 years.
5 years.
And at that point, the discussion was the hours were short and people got working in the yard, things of that nature.
It was 10 to
Too
6.
long. Too long,
Too
sorry.
long,
We shortened them.
too late.
Too late, sorry. So we have tried to change them because of feedback that we received. And, you know, in the last few elections, I know Tracy and Trish certainly have been closer to it, but we weren't getting a lot of complaints that it didn't meet their timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've tried different days, and Saturday does seem to work out better. It's certainly, depending upon the weather, that can have an effect.
Right.
But, I mean, we're open to suggestions, we're not.
And we do have to keep in mind when we talk about changing our hours, that requires a charter change, because it is written in our charter, the date, the time, the place. So,
Right.
you know, that isn't like we can just make a decision, that has to go through a charter change.
But we certainly have tried other days, other times throughout, you know, our times here.
And typically, from my experiences working the elections, the earlier, the better as far as
Right.
turnout. From like 7 to 10 is when we get majority of our people out. About 2 o'clock, it really fades off as far as people coming in.
Okay, any other questions for Tracy? Again, if the council chooses to bring this back, switching to the state option is an option at some point, although there's one thing that Tracy has discovered is that there is no perfect system. There are people that are left out in both, but if you went to the state system, that would get Seaford out of the registration process, and we would rely on the state process. So if council chooses to bring this back, we can bring it back forward. Do you have a question, Mr.
I
Henderson?
do. I would, if this is a continuing process, I would encourage you to keep going, you know, with your investigations into the online registration and things like that. Just, we're not doing anything official here,
Right.
but
That's
you know,
correct.
if it's okay with the city manager, I would encourage you to keep investigating.
Yeah, so I have a demonstration set up for September the 3rd at 11:30, and that's I'm actually partnering with another town, because they actually set it up and they're just letting me go along with them. So from there, we could get some cost estimates, and then Charles and Tricia would need to be involved as far as the IT side of it and the finance side of it to go forward from there.
And I would just make a suggestion. Certainly, when Tracy and I discussed it, we want to look into this. We see if we stay with our voter registration, this is another avenue we can use to reach our voters, and we think it might be a good idea, depending upon the cost. We also talked about other fillable forms we could do, special event permits.
Utility service
Thank you.
agreements,
I keep
requests for
forgetting.
absentee ballots,
There's a ton of them.
code stuff, you know.
The one thing I would say to council is I would rather not, if council wants to move away from this system, this would not be applicable for us. You'd use the state system. I would rather get a signal to staff, we do want to maintain this and we're willing to invest additional money to reach our voters or not. You know, I would hate to have to spend, you know, scarce resources to do this if we're not going to stick with this system. I guess that's the only feedback we would desire from council. If you want to stick with this system, we'll invest additional dollars and additional resources in it. If you don't, I'd rather kind of move away from that and we can put our resources somewhere else.
Any feedback?
Well, right now I'm leaning more towards moving over to the state registered. But you know, that's just what I'm thinking right now. I don't know what everybody else is kind of leaning towards.
Well, I'm interested in the more synergistic effects of having online participation and what it could do not only for voter registration, but for interacting with the city on multiple levels. You know, it is a cost issue, except that I see potential benefits with opening up online commerce and registration.
Right. Well, again, the reason we originally looked at the state issue, if you remember, is there was a voter registration issue. People couldn't get registered to vote. That seemed to be a huge, large complaint. If that's not an issue, the city system is working, it works. We need to tweak it and add as time moves on. But that's kind of the reason why this all was brought up, is that there was this, people can't get registered to vote. So by switching to the state, that would eliminate the city's involvement in that, and everybody would be registered. Then we'd go back to an election that it's the job of the candidate not to get people registered, but to get them out to vote, right? It would take the argument that people can't get registered off the table.
Yeah, and if you're asking Councilman King for opinion, I would have to go along with Jose also. I think, in my opinion, that it would be better to go with a state-run system.
I have a question for Tracy. Last time that you presented this, you said that if someone wanted to register to vote, you could just show them the link, and people would be able to go and just register. If we switched over to the voter.
Online?
Yeah.
Yeah, which it would be similar to this. It's a fillable form online on the state's website.
Okay. And with the other one, would we be investing money into making that happen, or would it be the same cost?
So we have to enter into an MOU with the state, agreement with the state. So as far as cost-wise, I don't believe there's a cost associated, but when I reviewed one that they had prepared for another town, it just basically laid out the roles and responsibilities of each one. I mean, we always have a cost as far as the machines, the poll workers for an election, the advertising, but I don't think there's a cost as far as using their database.
Okay. That's it.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, just keep pursuing this, and we'll keep looking and reviewing what other towns are doing. I appreciate you bringing back feedback. If we do make a decision, we'll have to bring it through for a council vote and then a charter change. So thank you, Tracy. Appreciate all your work on this. All right, next we have the second reading of Chapter 8 of the Municipal Code.
Yes, sir. The second reading, and it is an ordinance to amend Chapter 8 of the Municipal Code of Seaford, Delaware, relating to special event permits. And at the last council meeting, City Solicitor Dan Griffith was here, went through this code change in great detail, and this eliminates the existing code language that we have around special events, which is very minimal, just requires a permit, doesn't go into the detail that this does. If council decided to adopt this this evening at the second reading, the process for it would be we would then advertise it for 30 days, and then upon 30 days of advertisement, the ordinance becomes effective. It clearly defines what a special event is and what a special event is not. It says what you can do, where you can hold special events, and some of our rights, some of our authorities, some of our limitations on special events. And this just, again, is if someone would like to use public parks or public rights-of-ways, blocking any streets, utilizing any parks for large gatherings, things of that nature. Internally, staff would still do the same process now, where all directors and supervisors would review the request and make any recommendations for electric, police protection, porta potties, event insurance, things like that. It would give us an opportunity during the 45-day period of approval where we could meet the people that are doing it, ask them any questions about crowd control, crowd size, any of the sundry of things that you would need to do with a special event. And then it also allows us to recover costs for special events for things like blocking roads, providing special police protection. I will point out a little bit different. Right now, we do a refundable fee. This ordinance, if it were adopted, would be a non-refundable $100 fee for anybody that applies for this. It also allows us violations and penalties for people that do not follow the rules, and we have to wind up not issuing them special event permits in the future. We have a little bit more teeth to that. Certainly, that's a high-level explanation. If council desires any information, Katie is here, as well as I can try to answer any questions.
All right, are there any questions in reference to the amended Chapter 8 regarding special events?
Mr. Mayor, I have one. And Charles, you alluded, Councilman King alluded to the fact that our current ordinance or special permit that is a refundable deposit. This one isn't.
Correct.
So can we go into the reasonings behind why we have a refundable deposit? And then I know there's some expense tied into that, but we didn't have it in the old one, and now we're adding it to the language to the new one.
Yes, sir. I can't give you the why on why we did that. That was our first step into it. I think that a lot of times, and certainly Katie's here and correct any statement that I make incorrect, a lot of times in this last year or so that the special event permit that we've had in place, we try to meet with Katie specifically, meets with the people, speaks with them on the phone, and if it does not require full-blown special event permit, if it's a small gathering in the park, a birthday party, let's use that as an example, that's a situation where she would talk to them and say, that's not a special event, you can go ahead and do that. She wanted the ability to refund them the money. So I think that was the genesis of it. We're getting a lot more complicated now because of the recent occurrences with large gatherings that we have no control over. We're doing a lot more. We actually, staff members are doing our darndest to meet with every person that asks to use a park, whether it's that small birthday party or not. Because just frankly, some small birthday parties have turned into very large gatherings, and we did not, I don't think we spent the time to ask the questions. And so now we are kind of doubling down our efforts, and we're asking more questions, we're getting more staff involved. So what we've done and the investment we're making is greater than it was prior to this point in time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, as far as the refundable part, when we first read it, I also had, I think that if it's a refundable fee, people have more incentive to, adhere to the rules, because they, $100 is $100. For me, $100 is, enough money that I would want to follow everything to a T and get my money back.
Did you say if it is refundable, people tend to abide by the rules more?
If it's refundable, I would think it would.
I might be missing, and just to clarify, I believe the refundable issue is if you don't require a special permit, we refund your money. Is that not correct, Katie?
Well, also, if the park is not left in a satisfactory condition, you will not receive that refund back, because we have spent extra money in our budget cleaning up trash from the larger special events, and I think that's after one of those incidents, before we even did charge a refundable deposit, is when we had to take a look and say, look, this is an added cost to the city. It's our time, our effort, and now our money that we had to put in for somebody to clean up after someone. So that was one of the main reasons why we said, you keep our park clean, you're going to get your money back. But just to contribute to it becoming non-refundable, I also think that we are having larger events and more larger events, which I think is great that people want to utilize the city parks, but that does also cause, a need for us to use more of our staff. I mean, when you have a 2 or 3 day softball tournament.
Yeah.
You okay?
Sorry. When you have a 2 or 3 day softball tournament, most of the times our staff has to come in the day, that morning of, that Saturday after they have a Friday, and work for a few hours, and we
Katie,
don't
come up to
charge
the
them.
microphone, please.
No. Sorry.
I mean, if council's desire is to change the language during this reading to make that a refundable $100 fee, we absolutely can do that. This is the way it was presented. I just point out to council, we do have costs related to the review of it and some of staff's time, but absolutely, if you would like to change this to a refundable fee, we can certainly do that.
I think that it'd be a good incentive to get people to, pick up their trash or,
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Okay. So if I understand this correctly, the city is going to determine if it falls into a special event based on the size of the event. So really, we're gonna have like, if I understand it correctly, right? So if it falls within the size of it is large and it falls within a special event requiring a permit, then you would pay the money and not get the refund back, be reimbursed for the deposit. If the city deems it not requiring a special event permit based on the size, the deposit is still given based on the condition of the park when it's returned, then it's refundable. Did I state that correctly?
I don't think so, because let me clarify with Katie. If it's not a large event, it's just a birthday party, you don't require a special event permit.
No.
So they would, if that's the way it's administered, which I think is accurate, then they would never really get to the point of having to fill out this and fall under that.
Right.
Okay?
But who determines what?
Staff's going to determine that.
So there's no language that's gonna be written, say, hey, if you meet this criteria, then it's okay. If you exceed this, then you're gonna be required to have this permit.
It's in this ordinance, all right? And basically it says if you use, you have to block city streets, you have to block sidewalks, things like that. Large gatherings in the park, then that's what requires a special event permit. And when I say large gatherings, are you going to need city services?
Additional
Electric,
services.
police protection, water. There's an sundry of things that if you need our help and you need us to dispatch a man to put barricades up or unlock the park,
Bless you.
then it falls into that realm of special event.
That is correct.
But the size of the event doesn't dictate requiring a permit.
That certainly goes in, and it is a factor, yes, sir.
So is there
Absolutely.
numbers on, as far as a large gathering? Are you very specific with a
No,
number?
no, there is no number in here per se. Again, you can have a special event of, I'll use an example of 15 people that want to gather on a sidewalk at an intersection, and they're going to spill over into the road that becomes a traffic concern. But they want to do this demonstration at that location for some reason. Someone passed away there. It has special significance. The police might say, I need to be able to have bike patrol there to protect their safety. That becomes a special event.
May I provide an example?
Sure,
So
please.
out at Sir Optimus Park, we get park rentals all the time. We do not require a deposit. Typically, they pay $30 to rent the pavilion. The front pavilion holds, and that's seating wise, within the pavilion holds about 75 people. Typically, we do not rent to any more than that because that is capacity for the pavilion. It's also includes in parking needs. We don't want to disturb that flow of traffic, or cause anything to go out into the street. So if somebody were to say, oh, I would love to have a family reunion out at Sir Optimus Park, I want to have 200 people, that's when I would say if you absolutely have to have it at Sir Optimus Park, we can probably accommodate that, but you will need to fill out a special event permit because it kind of exceeds what the park is capable of, that specific area is capable of handling.
It's a great example.
Does that make sense?
Yep, makes
Okay.
a lot of sense.
Okay. Councilman Henderson?
Couple things. Clarify for me the $100 application fee. In my interpretation, in my reading, the $100 fee is the cost, is administered to defray the cost of processing the application. It has to go through many different departments. You have to process it, and then it has to be walked through many different departments. It's not a cost to defray the pickup of litter, because that would be in the bond or the other cost of service.
That's the way I looked at it, because
That's-
we had real costs. Yeah,
Right. So
I think you're correct.
My interpretation of the $100 fee is just the cost of processing the application. And if someone applies and the city goes through this process and then they cancel the event, the city has gone through expense.
Correct.
Yes,
And,
that's correct.
You know,
agree.
I see the $100 fee is, I've been dealing I've been dealing with the city of Seaford building department for 40 years, and I have to buy a plumbing permit, and it's the cost associated with the inspector coming out to inspect my work. So I think that the $100 application fee is just myself, because it helps defray the extra cost to process this application. I don't think it's punitive. I think it's just the cost of doing business.
I can agree with that. I absolutely agree with that.
I have a question. In that regard, are people, sorry. When it goes through everybody's hands, are they taking extra time out of their, are
Yes.
they working overtime?
Yeah, well, not overtime, but they're stopping what they're doing and getting together with a group of people to analyze how something's going to happen, who's going to cover what, make sure all the bases are covered.
And this is their normal business hours?
Traditionally, it's normal during normal business hours. The only thing that I'll add is we've had two marches in Seaford, and they were, by nature, and this is not a criticism in any way, so please don't take it that way, they were urgent. They had to happen, in essence, within days. So that took priority for several departments, police, public works, to try to get vehicles there, get barricades there, get police protection there, not only from our agency, but from agencies across this county and the state, because they were large events. So in those type cases, and we've had 2 in the last 14 months, it takes precedence.
Okay. In my reading, it said that if it's, I think there's something in there about 14 days. I think if it should be non-refundable if you have to do it, give them an answer within 14 days. And if it's past 14 days, maybe let it be refundable. Does that make sense?
Just let me repeat it so I understand what you're saying, that if it's a shorter time window between coming to the city and requesting it than 14 days, you pay the $100. If it's longer than 14 days, you get your $100 back.
Yes, sir.
Because you're saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're saying you can fit that into your schedule more so with a longer lead time than a shorter.
Yes, and yeah, that.
So if we're going to change, if someone wishes to change the second reading at this point, what is the process to do that? Does someone make a motion?
Well, what I would suggest, if that's the way council wants to go,
Well,
I
we
would
would need a-
suggest,
we
we
would
would
need
need a motion, but I would bring it back for a second reading with the modified language. So
If it passes the motion?
the motion would be to have staff take this back and revise the language to permit refunds of the $100 as outlined by Councilman Santos.
So if someone wants to make a motion, if you wish to make a motion, Councilman?
Yes, and will there be a chance to do a motion for other things than this? Or should we do it all at one time, or?
My
Are there
suggestion
other-
would be do it all at once, but
Right.
Okay. Then we can wait.
Yeah, Councilman.
Just to voice my opinion on this, I'm with Councilman Henderson. I think the $100 is just for clarification, in case anyone wants to make a motion.
Right. We'll have to make a motion, it'll have to be approved, and then, yes, sir.
To continue my questioning, I had a second part of the question that I hadn't gotten to yet, was with insurance. In Section 8.3.7, there's an insurance requirement, but then it goes further to say that there's an exemption if someone's exercising their First Amendment right.
right.
Just because you're exercising your First Amendment right and you express it and you cause damage that needs to be fixed does not absolve you from having insurance. I think that exemption is improper. You can't, in my mind, you can't go out and express your First Amendment right and tear up a park, cause physical damage, property damage to neighboring properties or bodily injury and say, oh, well, I was expressing my First Amendment right, so I'm not liable. So I think that in my mind, is unjust to the taxpayers of the city to put that burden on us all just because somebody chooses to express their First Amendment right with either graffiti or with a baseball bat or with anything, with a vehicle.
I think, and this would have been great questions to ask the attorney when he was here.
Right.
I think, and certainly if we need to get him back here, we will. The idea behind this ordinance is not to use the requirement for insurance against people who will want to legally protest. We don't want the city's not looking to use that as an instrument to say you cannot protest. What you spoke about, using a bat, doing graffiti, those are illegal acts.
Those are breaking the law.
And that veers away from peaceful protests into,
Oh, yes.
so that'll be handled by the police department. That's, yeah.
I understand your point.
But you gotta have, something has to be done to clean it up. Somebody's not gonna pay restitution.
Absolutely. No, you're 100%
You know, the
correct.
city, the residents of the city need to be protected in some way from that expense.
Yeah, and I think all of this is predicated on people will follow the rules and do what they're asked to do. What you're talking about.
If this was designed for people who follow the rules, then this 20-page document would be unnecessary.
No, I disagree with that.
Not necessarily.
I disagree with that completely.
Because, and this is what happened to us recently. Somebody came in and had a large gathering and did not have this. So the bottom line to this whole thing is, if they do not have a special event permit and they're wanting to use a park, they're going to be denied. They're not going to be let access. The police are going to say, you don't have a permit, you cannot gather here. So what this is designed to do is give us a tool to stop that in the very beginning, so it does not get out of hand.
Right.
That, to where you're talking about. And there is, and I know, Trish has some law enforcement experience, but if there are arrests made for, looting, rioting, anything like that, there are restitution. We participate in that all the time. We get restitution for vehicles that are stolen and damaged. We've had those things occur.
Well, the rule states 45 days for a special event.
Yes.
And the last several special events we had were
3 or 4 days.
4 to 5 days, 3
Yes,
to 4 days, and that puts a huge amount of stress
Agreed.
on
Everybody.
It interrupts the workflow
And
cost.
And again,
locks are made for honest people, right? So,
Yes, sir.
This
Yeah.
document is for honest people. I get that,
we
but
agree.
it also provides loopholes, in my mind,
It absolutely does.
to the unscrupulous.
And again, both of those events that occurred on that short notice, we accommodated their First Amendment right. And we believe in that. The city believes in that wholeheartedly. We want to support
absolutely.
people. Absolutely. And we did that. And I will say this, both events turned out great.
Perfect.
We had no residual, any problems whatsoever. We had communication with the people that did those, the police, both of you were involved. They turned out very well on short notice.
Right.
But it was a heavy lift.
I had another question. Definitions, letter M. Where it defines a person as a natural person, firm, association, etc. It goes down to, it mentions the word servant. And I was wondering if that was, that was put there by mistake, or if you could explain to me what that means.
In context, okay, so person, and it talks about club, company, corporation, business, trust manager, lease agent, servant, officer. I'm assuming it's just it's a term, so, if we're working together or you're in my charge or something of that nature, that's how I interpret that. But again, for real clarity, the attorney would need to parse that word for you.
Yeah. I just didn't feel like that word had any,
It's not valid to the definition. You just don't like the word servant.
yes, sir.
I mean, I certainly can
Well-
ask if that can be struck.
I am a public servant,
Correct.
Oh, okay.
so, I mean, we're all servants of some sort.
Amen.
So maybe put public servant? Yeah, I just haven't seen that in any legal document, and I asked some people who have, and they were like, no, I've never seen it, but maybe, I wish the attorney was here so we could ask him some questions.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly if you'd like to table this, and because we do have a lot of questions related to this, we can bring this back to the next council meeting that the attorney is
Right.
available to attend. If you guys would prefer that, I have no problem with that, if that's,
Do you have additional questions?
Yes. Let me see. There's a few notes that I've just wrote down. Where it says cost of recovery for special events, I was wondering what the fees are right now as, without this document, without this.
okay, so Katie's going to help me. Right now, depending upon the special event that you do, those costs are associated with that. I'll give you a couple examples. One, we do AFRAM every year. They pay for the electric. They pay for their special event permit. There's a sundry of things that they do that they pay for. So that's a cost, and I can't tell you what that is. We just did, I think it got delayed, the backpack drive on Collins Avenue.
Yes.
Did it happen, or is it next week?
No, it is supposed to happen this coming weekend. I'm working actually with the police department, whether it's going to be Saturday or Sunday because of
Okay.
weather. But as
So that's
Charles was about to
That's
say.
an example.
They are actually, because they're closing a road down in that area, which they had no problem with last year, but they have to pay for a special duty officer to make sure that traffic is not breaking the rule of not using that particular part of the road. And that is a pretty hefty hourly fee.
I think it's $65 an hour for the officer.
It's close, something around that. But that's a type of cost that they incur, and that's on a permit kind of base.
So
to
that's an
base.
example where the police worked with the organizer and looked at what he wanted to do. He wanted to close that portion of the road, but we still had to get traffic in and out. He couldn't commit an officer off shift, so they agreed to hire a special duty officer, and it has whatever cost associated with it. So that event comes with that cost as an example. So that's part of this whole event permit, that two-way conversation. What are you doing? What are the hours? How many people? All those details. And then staff looks at what we're comfortable and how we think it can be
Mr. Mayor.
successful with them.
Okay, good question. Can we use that example? So they're hiring an off-duty police officer, and what's the average hourly rate for an off-duty officer?
Around $65, I believe.
I guess the concern that I have is when you have a lot of these nonprofit outreach organizations doing great things in our community, right? And then say it's a 5-hour event, 4-hour event, and then we're sticking them, I shouldn't say sticking them. The cost that's associated with putting this event on, next thing you know, people are just walking away and not doing it. And so the issues that I have with this special permit, to me, there's a lot of gray area. You gotta come in and talk about the size, you gotta talk about the day, the city's gotta approve it, not approve it. And I understand the cost that's associated with that, but at the end of the day, people have the right to assemble. And I think these are obstacles and barriers that can prevent people from having that opportunity, and the cost associated with that is one of them. If you're handing out backpacks and you know, for a great event that, for kids that don't have that ability to pay for that, and then that fee's attached to that, that could prevent a lot of organizations, in my opinion, not doing it. So that's the issue that I have with this ordinance.
Bless you.
The one before is refundable as long as you leave it the way it is. This one, we're gonna charge you to do it. We gotta know the size of it, we gotta approve it. And to me, it's just some obstacles and barriers that could prevent people.
I mean, they still currently have to give me a deposit.
Right.
If they leave the area clean, I can give that right back to them at the
Right.
end of I don't think there's any disconnect. I mean, they will still have to pay that police fee. That is separate from the deposit. just as if they were to use electric or water or sewer of any type. Same with, out at the Jay's Nest, we don't.
Maybe to address your comment directly, what we do when we sit down with them, with any organization, and the backpack drive is a classic example. We try to work out with them their least cost. We understand. So we have that conversation. Some people come in with the idea, hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z, and it sounds good, they want to do it. After discussions with staff, Burley may say, we had an example with electric recently. I want to put electric here. We said, okay, here's what it costs to install electric there. I believe it was $500.
Yes.
Okay? We have the electric. It's just 3 men. You have to go get it, install it. So what we try to do is work out with them, there's electric over here. Could you redo your setup so you don't have that $500 fee? These are not barriers, but the reality is people who have not involved the city until this point, and they have an idea of how they want to do it, yet they don't know where our infrastructure is, don't know what we have to offer, anything like that. We use this as a dialogue to talk to them about how they can do it at the lowest cost, safety, do it safely, do it at the least expenditure for our people, and visitors and everything are safe. So it's not in any way to try to make a barrier, it's to set up that conversation. And our goal is to serve our public. We absolutely want them to use our parks, use our facilities. That's absolutely why they were built.
It's their parks, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, the
I mean,
taxpayers' park.
yeah, absolutely, and that's what they're there for. They have the right to use them. It's
Right.
their property. So we encourage that, and we have so many people using the pavilions now. There's a line. So,
It's a good thing.
yeah, and that's, unfortunately, we had to have the permit because so many people wanted to use them simultaneously.
Mr. Mayor, I got one question.
Yes, sir.
Katie, over the period of years that you've been working here, how many times that you did not, that you didn't refund $100? Is it an ongoing big problem, or, people, how many times do you not refund?
Well, the refundable deposit has only been in effect for probably, I'm going to say 2 years.
Okay.
And I've been here for 4. The only reason we really brought that, brought it to light is because we did have a very large event. It was a community event
Right.
in Sir Optimus Park, and they left our park
They
not
abused the
destroyed,
park.
but in very unsatisfactory conditions.
They
Prior
abused
to
their part,
that,
right?
yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and prior to that, I'll be honest, there are some trash after some events. It's not usually excessive. We pick up trash on Mondays and Fridays. We try to keep it clean, especially for those who come out on the weekends. We don't really have a whole lot of issues that become excessive issues. And now that we've actually implemented that refundable deposit, people have cleaned up. And I will reach out. If I know I'm in the area, I've been out there where it's softball tournaments, I will text the people that run the tournament and say, hey, the park, make sure this is cleaned up before Monday or else you won't get your deposit back. And they clean it up. I don't necessarily do that every time, but if I'm around or if I know that there's a large event going on, I try to make sure that they do get their money back, that they do keep our parks clean, so that others are able to enjoy it too.
Councilman Henderson.
Sorry.
I would like to clarify that the deposit in this instance is different than an application fee.
Yes.
That's correct.
Kim,
Okay.
I had one question regarding the, still same part, section 8.3.13, the cost recovery of special events, down at the letter D, where it talks about the applicant will be billed for any city departmental charges in excess of the estimate in the subsection B of this section, including any billing and collection cost incurred. So, I feel like if, you give them an estimate, that should be the price that they pay. If you make an estimate that's a little bit on the low side and there's other charges that incur, maybe they don't have the budget to pay added expenses. Like, what are you,
I mean, the way I read this, the organizer will be billed for actual city costs for cleanup and repair of the area or route occasioned by the special event. So we had a large amount of trash left in Sir Optimus Park and fencing broke. We had to go pick that up. We had to take it to the dump, so tipping fees, manpower, vehicles that had to take it over. And then we had to fix the fence. So we had materials, we had labor, so on and so forth. So we can't give an estimate in the beginning to say, well, if you're going to leave 2 tons of trash and you're going to break the fence here, it's going to be $1,000. It's an after-the-fact thing that we have to do.
but the insurance that they'd be getting, wouldn't that pay for the damages incurred?
I guess we could make an insurance claim. Sure, I guess we could do that.
The applicant has to get, I think, up to $1 million in insurance or
Yeah, but
something like
typically
that.
that type of insurance is for, tort issues and things of that nature.
Not for leaving trash.
Correct,
Or-
not for
Or
those.
breaking fences, it doesn't cover none of that.
I mean, it might, okay, but we typically don't go that route. And if we had this, and that's the whole idea behind this ordinance. This ordinance gives the city additional tools to deal with the things we're being faced with now. And we've had this is not theoretical, these are things that are happening. The insurance is kind of a last-ditch effort, because what happens when someone attends a special event and they trip and fall and they break a leg? They not only, they sue the city as well as anybody else who has insurance. We want to make sure the person who organized the event is insured so that it doesn't just come against our insurance. That's the idea behind the insurance. This ordinance gives us the ability, if we have damage done or a mess left, we can clean it up and somebody will pay.
Right.
And how much, that example you gave with the broken fence and trash, how much would that add up?
Katie, what do you estimate you had into that? Maybe $300 to $500?
Essentially, something. I don't think the trash was 2 tons
Yeah.
at all.
No, it was not.
Yes.
And
But
see, here's the issue. We didn't do an estimate on it because we were just forced to pick it up. And we were forced to just
take care of it.
take care of it. Yep. And again, people can use the park without any kind of permit. I go back, I guess, to what Councilman Henderson said, and create an equal mess, break the fence, and, we have no one to really go back to. That certainly can happen in a public facility and does happen.
And also, if I may add, after that incident, we also, not only we talked about the deposit, but we also talked about the amount of people and the amount of trash cans and porta-johns available. So if you were to hold an event that had 200 people, we don't have restrooms currently that can hold 200 people, enough that can hold 200 people. So we ask that you additionally purchase either a small roll-off dumpster to accommodate the trash, and then a few extra porta-johns for in excess of, 50, I believe it's 50 people. So for every 50 added people that you have on your event that we do not have current services for, that we cannot, I guess, accommodate, they have to get that. A lot of softball tournaments, they usually have to have extra bathrooms, and they'll get a small roll-off dumpster to accommodate the trash for the guests and the players that are coming. If that makes sense.
Okay, any other questions
I
from
have one
council? Yes, sir.
more. So can we talk a little bit about, we'll leave parks and we'll go to marches, protests. So the last two that we had, peaceful marches, protests, did they pull permits to do their march?
They did not.
So there was no cost associated with that, but,
There was cost associated with it, yes, sir, that no one was billed for that.
okay, but based on this language, if we adopt this language, would there be a cost associated for that same event?
Likely there would be, yes, sir. Yep.
Any other questions? Katie, thank you so much. If council chooses, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we table this topic for further investigation and possibly have our council available for more discussion and more answers.
Okay, we have a motion to table. Is there a second?
Councilman McCoy, I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Sorry, I didn't get a roll call vote. I apologize. Katie, thank you so much. All right, reminders of meetings.
Yes, sir. Let me get there. City offices will be closed on Monday, September 7th for the Labor Day holiday. After Labor Day, city offices will go back to working 8 to 5.
Wow.
Hallelujah.
8 to 5. All right, before we start council reports, you've all been asked to put together some videos, and 2 of you are out on the market. Great job. You've done a super job in front of the screen. Appreciate you doing that. 3 of you are up to come. It's our effort to promote what good is going on in our city and what we're doing, so I appreciate your guys willing to stretch your comfort zone and get in front of the camera and do that. So public should continue to look forward to these. So, all right, we'll start off with administration and IT with Councilman Santos.
Councilman Santos here. My report has been submitted in its entirety. As far as the project updates and meetings goes, there's meetings regarding meetings with the facility directors of Nanticoke Memorial Hospital regarding upcoming smoke testing. Smoke testing is intended to identify sources of stormwater in the sewer system, and the goal is to eliminate it. The hospital is the key customer with concerns regarding how this will occur, and the goal is to develop a plan to minimize the disruption to their patients and facilities. They will also participated in the annexation committees regarding the Sunrise Motel, the annexation of the Sunrise Motel on Sussex Highway. They met with Joy Dolby regarding the development of Dolby Farms. The Dolby Farms is located at the corner of Sussex Highway and Old Furnace Road and is moving through the development planning stages for residential housing development. Utility extensions and potential funding options were discussed. And as far as other work goes, there's 1 person that was hired for parks and recreation. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have Police Fire, Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Report's been submitted. It's lengthy. I'll give you some highlights. I will give you my interpretation of the report that President Matt Reed has given. We haven't heard from the President in some time, and he did give us an idea of what the board is considering. So, number 1, there's an analysis of the Atlanta Road rental property is being undertaken. There are several deficiencies in the house, including the cost of which to repair will exceed the net 5-year rental proceeds. So there's a water problem in the basement, electrical issues, plumbing and mechanical issues, other issues, structural and roofing. That there's a myriad of issues. So they're in the midst of reviewing the feasibility of repair or just what other options they can consider. So that's being done. The board is considering repurposing the ladies' auxiliary office. Their pattern of usage has changed in recent months, and so the space is being considered for bunks and other support facilities for on-duty members. That keeps the members that are in ready for response. They may be changing the way responses are done by having actual members stay on duty at the station. Those things are in flux, but that's what's being considered. So they're trying to get more facilities for members, and they're considering relocating the auxiliary office more towards the business office or possibly to another part of the building. Pardon me. They scratched around and found some surplus funds from last year, and they've redirected those funds to upgrade the gym. There's a coded audio-visual alert system that's being planned for installation throughout the facility to warn members of events or calls. And this is going to be separate from the audio system that was recently installed. And lastly, from President Reed's report, due to some highly publicized discrepancies in bookkeeping among fire departments across the state, Sussex County will be conducting more oversight of the funds they disperse. So Seaford Volunteer Fire Department is well positioned to be compliant with these new requirements to guarantee good stewardship of the support they receive. You may have seen in the news where there have been some departments where funds went missing or were misallocated. Sussex County provides a lot of funding, a lot of support for the local departments in the county. So they just want to be able to audit, do oversight of the funds that they disperse so that they can be assured that they went where they were supposed to go. So that concludes the business from President Reed. Chief Wilson reports, I'll give you just a brief snippet there. He has his year-to-date, year-to-date calls, 495 fire and rescue. EMS calls were 2,095. This was as of 11:15 hours, 8:24. So this particular report, he has started averaging calls, so that's an average of, for fire and rescue, that's an average of 2.3 calls per day up to date. On the EMS, it's an average of 9.5 calls per day. In apparatus, the rescue boat is out of service for electrical repairs. The aerial certification for the tower is was canceled, so it's being rescheduled. So it's still out of service. They just recertified and tested their SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus. So that's an annual requirement, and that, all of their equipment is now tested. They recently received the bids for Ambulance B87. There were 5 vendors that submitted bids, and they'll be open tomorrow night at the regular business meeting, and then it'll be returned to the committee for review, and then there's a process. I think there may be a vote by the membership, and then it'll go back and it'll be awarded. And then you have to wait. I don't know how long it is, probably six months or so to get it delivered, maybe less. On one bright note, engine number 4, which is the red engine in the museum, will be on display at the Antique Car Show on the 6th of September at the Blaze Fire Company. So they're in there working and polishing on that thing to make it bring home the gold. There you go. Moving on to police activity, you can see that there's the crime view reports, the total incidents to date, tracking somewhat similarly to 2019. There is an alarming trend that we're not at the end of the third quarter, and we've got almost as many overdoses as we did the entire year last year. So that's pretty alarming, and it just goes to show you that COVID-19 may be a contributing factor to some of these things. It's putting stress on a lot of people and an inability to cope. So those are some things that may be contributing to that number. I'll move down. The highlighted areas, we'll discuss an incident that occurred on August 19th. Seaford Police Department located a lady that was trespassing at the Seaford Village Shopping Center. She had previously been served with a debarment letter from the property, As a result, she was arrested for trespassing while panhandling and released on an unsecured bond. Seaford Police Department continues to discourage panhandling for public safety concerns in our high traffic areas. The shopping center is one of the businesses that have provided written notification to prohibit this activity on their property. Our goal is voluntary compliance through education, engagement, and when necessary, enforcement. If you have any discussions with the chief, one of the things he will bring up is the increased incidence of large crowds, and there's a listing of four recent large crowd events that were not permitted, by the way.
You're right.
I wonder if they were on state property.
Not Collins.
One was on city property.
Out of the four?
Out of the four.
Okay.
The others were on, actually, they spilled out onto public streets, so there was actually one that was on private property. And finally, in the events column on August 18th, Seaford Police Department coordinated a modified bike rodeo at Meadowbridge Apartments and partnered with Children and Families First, Parks and Recreation, the Sussex County Health Coalition, and Preston Group. It was well attended and with a great community outreach. Seaford Police Department administration, the mayor, vice mayor, city manager, and many others, including Councilman Holland, were present and supported the event. So appreciate everybody who came out. It was a well-attended event. They gave away 6 bicycles and a lot of other tchotchkes and little freebies, and I think a good time was had by all. So that concludes my report.
Well, thank you for your work in the police department. Oh, yeah, we get to watch your video.
Capstone.
I guess I'm up.
You're up. Play it, Dano.
I didn't bring my script. I didn't bring my script.
Nothing secret.
Watch Tracy again.
Hi, I'm Dan Henderson, City Councilman and Vice Mayor for the City of Seaford. With me here on the Riverwalk today is Chief of Seaford Police, Marshall Kraft. Together, we would like to highlight an issue that affects our residents, visitors, and our business community alike. And that issue is panhandling. We are responding to concerns by numerous businesses and residents of the recent increase in this activity. It is an unfortunate truth that basic needs of some of us in our community are not being met. Needs so great that some have resorted to soliciting money on public as well as private property. What we would like to do today is to provide some resources and alternatives to not only assure that safety of those in need and that of the general public, but to more effectively assist the impoverished here in our city. I will turn it over to Chief Kraft to explain some of the measures he and his department are taking to increase public safety and provide assistance to those truly in need. Chief?
Thank you, Councilman Henderson. The Seaford Police Department began to receive complaints of panhandling earlier this year. Based on complaints and investigations, we found that some of our panhandlers were aggressively approaching customers in parking lots. They were standing in intersections and sitting or standing in median strips in high traffic areas. This type of activity causes traffic safety concerns due to driver distraction. Additionally, handing cash to panhandlers may also lead to unintended consequences, as well as the unsafe practice of exchanging cash with someone that you do not know. As a result, we've also spoken with several of our charitable organizations throughout the community, and we found that many have been contacted, and most turned down the services and benefits, stating that they just wanted the cash. Across the country, studies have shown that most panhandlers are not homeless, and most homeless are not panhandlers, and this tends to bring a negative light on our homeless population throughout the city. To help discourage donating cash or change to panhandlers, our department began using signs such as this behind me throughout the city. The goal is to encourage donations to our local charitable organizations for people in need. By reducing the profitability of panhandling in high traffic areas throughout our city, we will not only reduce the public safety hazards, but we will most likely increase the services and benefits truly needed for our at-risk citizens. With this, I'd like to turn it back over to Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Chief. We have a very generous and active community here in Seaford, and we want to assure that those who are seeking help get the services they truly need. There are several organizations in our community that are uniquely positioned to provide these resources. Donations to these dedicated organizations, run by our neighbors, are utilized to provide direct assistance where appropriate. These organizations also provide navigational aids with an aim of providing life-changing resources. They do so in a manner that generous people in our community can be assured their donation is going to make a positive impact on someone's life. Because direct hand-to-hand donations sometimes have unintended consequences, we urge you to support these organizations. With your help, we can move toward a safer, more prosperous community for all who live, work, play, and pray here in Seaford. Thank you for watching, and make it a great day.
Good job, man.
He said that was one take.
That's
Yeah.
right. All right, next we have Codes, Park and Rec. Councilman Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Start off Parks and Recs. They are advertising for youth clinics. A Minstow Pitch League meeting was held, and 16s have confirmed so far, and is to begin August 31st. And they're coordinated with Nanticoke Watershed Alliance interns to remove shrubs at the pool. And they had completed an interview for Parks Tech 1 for the opening and lined up new part-time person of interest. Soccer participants from 2019 was contacted by the upcoming clinic to start 9/1 and 9/2, and they participated in SPD bike rally at Middlebridge. And Code Department, they issued 559 rental licenses, and Del Dot work was started at Miller Ridge, and all the work is routine. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you very much. Next we have Electric with Councilman McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to hit a few just for a brevity standpoint. A few trees were cut down over the last few weeks at 630 Nylon Boulevard, 134 Hall Street, 620 Nylon Boulevard, as well as a tree limb had fallen on the primary wires on West Ivy Drive, rather. The crew separated the primary feed to the old Holiday Inn from the old Friendly Service to sectionalize the cabinet. And they blew in the string at the AutoZone to pull the wire in for next week. Over the course of the next few weeks, they're going to get truck 3 and 19 serviced, finish trimming the trees in Williams Pond Park, and continue working in Milford Road 2 as they build more units. In addition to my report, our report rather, Friday night we had the city dinner to recognize our employees. It was a great time. Always great to see a lot of hardworking people get recognized for a lot of hard work to do all year long. So had a blast with that. Hopefully you guys did as well. And Bill Bennett and myself put together a little video here with the direction of Trisha Newcomer. She had her work set out for her because Bill and I were doing a little Laurel and Hardy routine throughout the process here, and Trish did a great job. My wife saw the video and even commented, "Dear, you don't look homeless." So she did a great job, and you look pretty good. So Trish, if you will. Hey guys, Matt McCoy, City Councilman for the City of Seaford and our liaison for our Seaford Electric Department. I'm pleased to come to you guys this afternoon here with Mr. Bill Bennett, our Director of Electric, to talk about our Efficiency Smart program. Bill knows all the ins and outs about the program, so I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Electric, Bill Bennett.
Thank you, Councilman. The Energy Efficiency Program, Efficiency Smart, is available at no charge through the City of Seaford in cooperation with DMEC, the Delaware Municipal Electric Co-op. It's something out there for everybody, every electric user in the City of Seaford. A large business, they'll come in, do an evaluation, an assessment of your operation, how you're using electric, give you ideas and tips on how you can save money, and any financial help that may be out there through grants or programs. They'll also do the same thing for a small commercial business. They'll come in, assess your situation, your usage, give you some tips on how you can save money using electric and lower your electric bill. And for residentials, they'll do that. They'll do a home assessment. They'll come in, tell you ways you can maybe save money on your electric and lower your electric bill. They also have a program where you can get LED bulbs for 99 cents a piece at the open cupboard here in Seaford. So, you know, that's another way, an easy way to save money, is just change your bulbs to LED bulbs available at the open cupboard. So it's a program that's available to every electric customer that the City of Seaford has. So there's another thing you should do is come in and take advantage of it and save you some money. It's good for everybody. With that, I'll turn it back over to Councilman McCoy.
If you're like me, you want to save a little money, 99 cents. You can buy an LED bulb, as Mr. Bennett was saying, at the open cupboard. For more information, you can find it on the city website, City of Seaford. Check out our website, and it's very easy, guys. Click, save energy, be more efficient, and save some money in the process. Thank you very much.
Good job, man.
Well done, man. See, it's just that easy, isn't it?
Unlike Councilman Henderson, we didn't have a teleprompter behind us. We were all natural. But no, big thanks to Bill Bennett. He clearly did the heavy lifting. I just was there to look pretty. So back to you, Mayor.
Appreciate you stepping up and doing that. And finally, we have Public Works Wastewater Treatment, Councilman King.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's gonna be a hard one to follow. I tell you, I'm gonna try. The report has been submitted in its entirety, and get an opportunity, please look over it. I encourage it. Burley Mears and his team are extremely busy. I want to thank them for everything they do. Some of the highlights that's currently going on throughout our city. Route 13, the water main extension is still in the testing phase. They finished up the Church of God paving is completed there. They trimmed trees on Pine Street near Fred Douglass, the entrance there to the school. They replaced signs on Front Street. Actually, it's 2 solid weeks of 3 men doing nothing but going around picking up limbs from the storm. They just finished going through the town the first time this Friday. So there's a lot of work and energy and resources going into that. The force main and pump station installation for the Unified Sewer District is ongoing. Wastewater treatment facility plant performance remains good. And some of the upcoming work that's going to take place, they're receiving bids for the Seaford Fire Department roof. They installed signs in Muirfield, replaced water services on King prior to paving, repair subway pitch on Porter, and doing a lot more. And with that, I just want to echo what Matt said about the employee recognition ceremony we had Friday night. It was a phenomenal event. First time I've ever been to Vanderwin's Farm. It's beautiful. Other than the mosquitoes, I mean, it was a wonderful time. The food was fantastic, and it's just great to see the hard-working men and women of the city being recognized for their performance. It was an awesome event.
Good. Thank you. Okay, with that, I do want to recognize Charles here with his 30-year pin on his jacket tonight. Looks very good. And I do want to acknowledge
30 more to go.
30 more to go, and he can wrap it up. I do want to acknowledge Charles has won a leadership award at this past event, and well-deserved for what we've been through this past year between COVID and civil unrest and budgets and more to come. It's been an exciting year. You certainly deserve it, so I appreciate all you do. So with that, I'll accept the motion to go into executive session.
Councilman McCoy, so moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Councilman King, second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you.